Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to discuss the top 10 differences between carpet versus dirt setups for RC racing. So if you're new to RC, it's one of the things that you may not be aware of if you plan on getting into racing, the fundamental differences between how a carpet vehicle is set up and a dirt vehicle is set up. RC car racing happens on two main types of surfaces: dirt, and that dirt can vary from loose, unnatural, or loose, untreated natural dirt to clay tracks that have been treated with oil or sugar or other types of additives to not only seal the surface, but to increase the traction level as well. The other main types of surfaces that people run on are carpet or astroturf. So that indoor, outdoor green type carpeting that you see. So some people actually race on that. And the carpet varies as well. Some of it is specifically made for the RC industry, and then some of it is the commercial version of that, which is typically less expensive than buying actual RC carpet, which, let's face it, is just regular carpet rebranded so they can charge you more. So by design, carpet and astroturf just happen to be high bite surfaces, and they're also very consistent, which means that you don't have to change your tire selection, but more on that later. The way you set up your car for each surface can vary greatly. So what I mean by that is how you set up a car for dirt versus how you set up a car for carpet can, and it's somewhat individual, vary greatly depending on how deep you want to go down that rabbit hole of setup. And so let's take a look at an RC racing vehicle set up for these two contrasting surfaces. All right, so number one on our top 10 differences between carpet and dirt is tires. So there's two things to keep in mind when selecting a tire for dirt or a tire for carpet or astro. I'm just going to say carpet from now on because it's easier. And that is the compound and the tread pattern. So here, this truck is a dirt truck, and the front tire, you can see, has a different tread pattern. That's the most obvious thing that you can pick up on camera, is that the dirt truck has rib tire, and the carpet truck has basically kind of like a broken rib and some pins in the middle. But what you can't pick up on camera is the fact that these are two very different compounds. That means the type of rubber. So this rubber is much softer and therefore is going to produce more grip, give better traction. Because carpet surfaces have just natural traction because of the nature of how they're made, the carpet tires are actually harder. They feel more like plastic than rubber. And that is because a dirt tire on a carpet would produce too much traction and actually cause the vehicle to flip over in the corner from something we call traction roll. So the compound type of rubber and the tread pattern, that varies. So if we look at the back tires, we can see that although they both have pretty small pins, the dirt tire is almost identical, but again, the major difference here between these two is the compound, the rubber that it's made out of. The dirt tire being, of course, much softer, and dirt tires vary quite a bit to big pins, small pins, even bar style tires for high bite clay tracks. Moving on, the next big difference between a carpet car and a dirt car, or carpet setup and a dirt setup, number two, differentials. A dirt car will have a ball differential, and I've got one here that I can pull up real quickly to show you. And a ball differential actually has small steel balls or carbide balls in the center of this gear with rings on the outdrives, this part here, and a thrust bearing and thrust washers as well. So this is a ball differential. We use ball differentials on dirt because they produce more traction than a gear differential. So if you run a ball diff on carpet, it's going to burn out quickly, and then just the car is not going to handle right. A gear diff has four differential with 4 gears inside of it, typically, instead of balls. And you control the traction and how it turns based on the thickness of the diff fluid that goes inside that diff. So, dirt setup, ball differential. Carpet setup, gear differential. Can you run a gear diff on dirt? Yeah. Is it ideal? Not really. But more people would run a gear diff on dirt than would run a ball diff on carpet. So, and I'm kind of doing these in the order I think are important. If you're just going to a carpet track for the first time and you want to try out carpet racing, at the very, 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 very minimum, tires. You're not gonna enjoy your experience if you hit a carpet track with dirt tires. Then it would be the differential. Switch from a ball diff to a gear diff. Next, number 3 on our list is shocks, springs, and oil. So when you combine those things, we call it your shock package. Your shock package is the oil inside that controls the speed of the dampening, and the spring, which controls the rate and the ride height. Now, the differences here are thickness of oil and stiffness of spring. So on dirt, softer oil, softer springs allow the vehicle to ride over the bumps, and instead of bouncing over the bumps, which provides better stability and allows you to go faster and adds traction. On a carpet setup, you're going to go to a thicker, heavier oil to slow down the action of the vehicle on carpet, because on carpet there's no forgiveness, but there's no bumps either. So you don't need a soft suspension because there's not really a lot of bumps to go over. Yes, there's some jumps, but when you're going down the straight on a carpet track, it's pretty much what you would expect, smooth sailing, like driving on a flat carpet. So your suspension package on a carpet vehicle is going to have stiffer springs and thicker oil. Number 4 is the gearbox configuration. So we start here with our dirt truck. We can see that the gearbox is one of the dead giveaways that this is a stand-up gearbox is the gear cover. Typically a lay down or lay back gear cover gearbox does not have a gear cover. So in my associated T6.1 here, I have what's known as a stand-up gearbox. So that means that the gears inside this gearbox have been stood up. And the reason for that is to move the motor towards the back of the vehicle to increase the rear weight bias. So that means we want to have as much weight towards the back wheels as possible, because dirt tracks do not produce the same amount of grip in the surface that carpet tracks do. So in order to increase handling, forward traction, dirt cars often have either a laid back gearbox or a stand-up gearbox. So a laid back would be just a smaller idler gear than a lay down. So the gears are still laid down, but the idler gear being smaller brings the motor further back. So that would be for a track like a clay track, a high bite track, where this would produce too much rear grip. All right, so dirt gearbox, lay back, or stand-up gearbox in order to move the motor further back to increase the rear weight bias. Carpet setup, one of the dead giveaways of a carpet setup or a high bite setup is the exposed spur gear. So that means that the top shaft is down in a row with the other gears. So we've got our top shaft, followed by our idler gear, followed by our differential, all in line. And the reason for that is to push that motor further forward, to reduce the rear weight bias or increase the forward weight bias. Because on carpet, we don't need gobs of rear traction. We often like gobs of steering. So one of the things that you do to increase your handling and corner speed is to move that motor away from the back wheels towards the front of the vehicle. So that takes us into our next difference, number 5, weight bias. Okay, so weight bias means it refers to the percentage of weight and how it's distributed. So for example, on a dirt setup, we may want to have 65% or even greater of the total vehicle weight at the back. On carpet, we may only have 55% of our weight towards the back, because we don't need the weight over the back wheels to produce traction, because the track produces traction. So some of the ways that we get that weight bias, we look at our carpet car here. That is a brass bulkhead. So I got a 30-gram brass bulkhead hanging off the front of the vehicle. Why? To increase the front weight bias. Compare that to the dirt truck, you can see that the bulkhead is plastic. All right, we want to keep the front end light on the dirt truck. Next thing that we have that's different is a steel servo and electronics weight. So it's kind of hard to see, but if you know what you're looking at here, if you look underneath my servo, you can see that there is a shiny steel plate under there. And if you look underneath my electronics, underneath my servo and my receiver and my speed control, there's another steel plate there. If we flip the chassis over and look underneath, see these small screws here and here? Those are the screws that attach those chassis weights to the chassis. Again, to increase the forward weight bias, to try and get the weight off of the back and onto the front. If we look at the bottom of the dirt car here, we can see that there are no screws in the front holes and screws in the back, but that plate on my dirt truck is just carbon fiber plate and doesn't even need to be there. I don't know, I had my electronics there once upon a time, removed the electronics, didn't remove the plate, but not necessary for a dirt setup. And if we look at the electronics on this truck, so these are both Team Associated T6.1s. If we look here, we've got the speed control and the receiver against the battery, and the battery is all the way to the back against the waterfall. Well, if we look here and here, these two holes in the chassis side rails are where the battery hold down screws go, and they determine how far back or how far forward we can mount the battery. So here on the dirt truck, we see that I've got my battery tray mounting screw in the back hole, so that I can move the battery all the way back next to the motor against the waterfall, and then my electronics are all the way back against the battery. Now let's compare that to the carpet truck. On the carpet truck, now we see, now the battery strap is a little bit different here, but we see that the screw for holding down the battery tray is in the front hole, and that allows me to move that battery all the way to the front as far forward as I can on the side rails here on this T6. And then I've got my electronics on the plate in front. The reason why everything is pushed forward like this is because of the lay down gearbox that has a much larger idler gear than your typical stand up or lay back gearbox. This idler gear is 39 teeth. So the reason for that bigger idler gear is to push that motor further forward, again affecting the weight bias. We're trying to get all that weight from the back to the front. Next, when it comes to affecting weight bias in a carpet versus dirt car, we can see here that on my carpet truck, see that blue anodized piece right there? Well, that's called the C block, and it controls where you put the pills, and the pills control your anti-squat and your toe. So we've got a blue anodized aluminum one in the front in the C block, and if we look at the back, we've got a blue anodized aluminum one in the D block. So C in the front followed by D, both aluminum. If we compare that to the dirt stadium truck, well, look at that. The D block is brass in color because it's brass in material. So also C block right there by my finger in front of the rear suspension arm, also brass. So where the carpet truck has steel and brass in the front, the dirt truck has brass in the back. Different weight bias. We want the weight bias towards the rear on the dirt. All right, let's move into number 6. Number 6 in our list of top 10 differences between a carpet and dirt setup is mechanical grip. chassis length, wheelbase, diff heights, axle heights. These are all aspects of mechanical grip that can be adjusted on the car. So you've got grip from your tires, you got grip from the surface of the track, but then the adjustments on your car provide mechanical grip. So the cars are very adjustable. If you're new to RC and you built one, you've noticed that, you know, this ball stud goes in this hole, and this axle is this high, and this differential is this high. That's all about mechanical grip. Those are all things that are adjustable on the car or truck to either produce or reduce mechanical grip. So, starting at the back, moving towards the front. Starting at the front, moving towards the back. So, if we look at my front axle carrier, steering block, a couple different names for it. You'll see that there's a blue bushing above. This part right here is the steering block, and the axle is in there. There's the axle right there. So there's a blue caster hat bushing above the steering block and one below. We actually have on the associated front ends 3 millimeters of vertical movement adjustability. You can move that 3 millimeters up or 3 millimeters down. So, and a combination of that, you can put all 3 millimeters underneath the steering block to raise it a full 3 millimeters, or you can put a 2 millimeter caster hat bushing there, or a 1 millimeter. So if you got the 3 on the bottom, you have a 0 spacer on the top, and vice versa. So here we see on my dirt truck that I have raised it one. What have I done? I have raised it 1 millimeter. So rather than being all the way down with all 3 millimeters on top, I've raised it 1 millimeter. If I needed more steering, I would remove that 1 millimeter and put all 3 millimeters of adjustable spacing on top to lower the steering block. Now, if we compare that to the carpet truck, we will see that the blue caster hat bushing is underneath the steering block right there. So that means that we have raised the front steering block, the front axle, 3 millimeters up. And why did we do that? We did that to remove steering from the truck, to make the truck not have as much steering. So we get a little bit of a understeer, because the traction of the surface gives us enough that if we were to lower these wheels, we'd have too much front traction and we'd oversteer. All right, moving our way back on the trucks, it's not a thing, but on the cars, the chassis are actually different depending on the surface you drive on. So the Team Associated B6.3 is 3 millimeters longer than the Team Associated B6.3D. Then makes the wheelbase longer, and which is better on high grip surfaces. What else? The rear diffs. The rear differentials are also adjustable for mechanical grip and would be adjusted differently. So to the extreme, on the dirt car, you could bring your differential, or your rear hub 3 millimeters down and 2 millimeters forward, and that would produce the most amount of grip that you could get out of a hub adjustment. On the carpet car, we would run the rear hub all the way up and all the way back in the most extreme conditions, where the carpet produces lots and lots of grip and has a lot of fast flowing turns. Next adjustable thing for mechanical grip is actually your diff height. When you're running not on the 3 gear, not on the 4 gear, but on the lay down and the lay back, the differential, it's hard to show here, but you'd be looking at your outdrives here. The differential can actually be moved a total of 3 millimeters as well. So any combination of that, you could raise it 1 millimeter at a time until you have raised it the full 3 millimeters, or you can push it all the way down. So 0, 1, 2, and 3. And that again has to do with keeping things level during ride height changes and adding or removing mechanical grip and center of gravity. those are the big ones that you can adjust. Next would be number 7 on our list, and that is ride height. So if we let the truck fall here, the ride height on this is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 27 millimeters off of the ground, measured from the back here, and then we measure it from the front here, and we do that with a ride height gauge. So outdoor tracks, a little bit more ride height is good for the bumps, and it's good for producing grip in the low bite conditions. On carpet, however, we reduce our ride height on the trucks to as low as 15 millimeters. Maybe a little more, but just the difference to keep in mind here if you're new is carpet lower, dirt higher. That's it. That's change number 7, or item number 7. Number 8 on our list is roll centers. Roll centers are a mechanical item on the car that you adjust to add or reduce, call it roll resistance, how easy or how difficult it is for the car to roll in the turns. Now, the one that we adjust the most, or at least the one I adjust the most, is the rear roll center, and typically it's adjusted by raising or lowering the inside ball stud. So when you raise the inside ball stud, you lower the roll center, meaning you lower the roll resistance. You make the vehicle easier to roll in the turns. Now, why does this matter? If you have a high roll center or high roll resistance, when you're going through a turn on carpet where there's lots of grip and the vehicle can't roll, it will roll over. So to prevent traction roll, you reduce your roll resistance to allow it to lean over in the turns as opposed to flipping over in the turns. Okay, so for example, on my carpet car, I am running 4 millimeters of ball stud washers underneath the inside ball stud, but on my dirt truck, I'm only running 2.5 millimeters underneath the ball stud. So if I need it to roll less, I'll bring that ball stud down. If I need it to roll more, I will bring it up. And on dirt, well, and it's side bite. It's how much side traction you have. So are you spinning out in the turns, or is the car leaning into the turn and maintaining traction throughout the apex? Number 9, slipper clutches. So slipper clutches have actually taken a change this year for the associated cars. From carpet to dirt, the size of the spring that you use is different because you need to slip less on carpet. A slipper clutch is a mechanical adjustment that provides traction by not allowing the rear end to spin out on you. But on carpet, it's less likely that the rear end is going to spin out on you. So Associated has started to provide different pads with more material and a much stiffer spring so that the slipper actually slips less on carpet. So if we look at the size of that spring here on the carpet truck, you see it's quite large, 500 inch-pounds, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But then if you look at the spring for the slipper on the dirt truck, much, much smaller. And that will allow it to slip more. Next, and finally, the last thing is hard parts. So the material in which some of the parts are made out of are actually harder on the carpet cars than on the dirt cars, and that is because the soft parts flex, and that flex provides a bit of traction. So on carpet and high bite surfaces, some of the parts are now being made out of a harder plastic. Currently, Associated offers what they call carbon. So the carbon parts are lighter yet stiffer than the old hard plastic ones. So on the T6 carpet truck here, my front arms, let's look at the difference in color here. And hopefully the camera picks this up. But the carpet car this one has hard front arms, and they are a different colored gray. Where the dirt truck is kind of black, the carpet truck is gray. Along with that, I've installed the new top plate and ball stud mount in the new carbon material. My T6 has hard side rails, and again, you can tell there by the color. And if you look at the rear arms, the carpet truck has hard rear arms, where the dirt truck has the soft rear arms. So again, you can tell by the color. Now, I've experimented with hard arms on my two-wheel drive, my four-wheel drive, and my two trucks. My cars actually, I felt, handled better with soft arms, and so I stayed with those. But on my trucks, they performed better with the hard plastic parts, so I stayed with those. Chassis braces, also a thing. If you want a stiff chassis on a high grip surface, and so you'll have a chassis brace here off the waterfall, but on some dirt setups the chassis brace is removed, and that's a feature of a lot of different cars, and it's kind of a known tuning option. If your car has chassis braces, you take them off on a really rough blown out track to allow some flex, to allow traction. So, well, there you have it, guys. Top 10 differences between a carpet setup and a dirt setup. Broad strokes, not too much detail. I try not to step out of my my comfort zone or get out of my pay zone, my pay area, or whatever that silly expression is. There you go. I messed up a good video. I almost made it clean. What are you gonna do? So, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comment section below. And if you're new and are unsure between dirt setups and carpet setups, I hope this little introduction helped to get rid of some of the confusion surrounding the differences between the two. Until next time, everybody, take care.